not just to this nation, but to high-tech technology and the availability of them from a cost perspective for the continuation of our economy. And I am delighted today to have each of our members here. I have asked the gentleman, and he deferred the gentleman, the ranking member of the committee today, the gentleman from Massachusetts, wanted me to welcome not only Mr. DeFazio, as I'm doing now, and offering the gentleman a chair. Mr. DeFazio, welcome to the Rules Committee, but also to the gentleman, the sponsor of the bill, the gentleman, Mr. Amadei from Nevada. It is my understanding that the chairman of the committee, the gentleman, Mr. Hastings, is on the floor at this time and not able to be here. So without objection, we will move forward with the knowledge that Mr. Hastings, a former member of this committee for a long time, will be missed. And without objection, gentlemen, anything that you have in writing as you choose will be entered into the record. We're welcome both of you very much. The gentleman from Nevada is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've indicated, we're here on the National Strategic and Critical Minerals Production Act of 2013. The bill seeks to provide some stability and predictability to the permitting process by federal land managers, requiring permits traditionally required by the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service in the minerals extraction industry. At its core, it, upon the request of an applicant, sets forth a 30-month process in which to provide the NEPA process for applicants for federal permits. That process can be extended by agreement of both parties, but the idea is that we reclaim some of our former spots in the overall world market when this country produced many of the rare earths and other strategic and critical minerals that were important not only to this nation's defense, but to its economic and commercial well-being, as well as its health industry. We've also seen over the years that exploration dollars worldwide have fallen from 20% in the United States to single digits, high single digits, about 8%. So this is an attempt to provide some terminability to the federal permitting process. I will end my initial presentation with this. The bill seeks to provide predictability to the time frame that it takes to get a federal permit, or to the time frame that it takes to get denied for a federal permit. If you read the 11-plus pages of this bill, there is nothing in the bill that says you will be granted a permit in 30 months. It says you will get the news, good or bad, within 30 months, unless both parties agree to extend the time frame beyond that, which I think is a healthy thing because it engages the applicant and the permitting authority in dialogue in terms of what's necessary in those particular circumstances. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the committee consider a structured rule for this when it goes to the floor, and would yield back my time for this portion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amadei. The gentleman from Oregon, my dear friend, Mr. DeFazio, is recognized, and welcome to the Rules Committee, Pete. We're delighted that you're here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate seeing you here today also. Could have mentioned that our senior ranking member is still with us in the House. His swearing into the Senate has been delayed because the state of Massachusetts went on vacation last week, but I'm here in his stead since he's already thinking like a senator, so he couldn't be here today. I agree with both the gentleman, the chair, and my colleague on the committee that the inventory of strategic and critical minerals, the amount, the location, and the availability is critical to our national economic well-being and potentially to our national defense. Unfortunately, the legislation before us has gone a bit beyond national strategic and critical minerals. The definitions in the bill, we believe, are so overly broad that it would exempt, in all probability, common mineral extraction on federal lands under this bill, that is sand, gravel, potentially coal, and other minerals would be exempt from the NEPA process. Now, the bill doesn't specifically exempt everything from the NEPA process. It does set this 30-month guideline, but the language in the bill is such that the agencies must determine that NEPA is not necessary, the National Environmental Policy Act analysis, if the combination of some part of the state and federal rules are adequate to protect the environment and the public interest. Again, a rather broadly worded exemption from NEPA, which causes tremendous concern on our side of the aisle. We would note that the Obama administration actually has improved the processing of hard rock mining plans of operation. They're doing them essentially 15 to 20% more quickly on average than the previous administration. And where they are minor actions or actions without environmental complications, they're doing much better than that. Major operations which border other, natural areas or critical environmental areas or wilderness areas or actually streams that feed water supplies and other critical issues to the general public do take a bit longer to make certain there's not going to be detrimental impacts, and we believe that the public should fully be able to participate in that process, and under this legislation they may well be excluded. I did sit through the hearing on the bill, and there's another provision in the bill which actually says if you object to an action of the administration which affects mining on public lands, you have 60 days to file litigation. The principal witness on the Republican side had filed a suit contesting the Obama administration moratorium on uranium mining adjacent to critical areas of Grand Canyon National Park, but it took 270 days for them to file. When I asked the gentleman if he could have filed within 60 days, he was a bit confused, and then when I finally explained to him what the bill said, he said, no, that wouldn't work for us. Upon further questioning by a Republican member of the committee, he reiterated that statement that he couldn't possibly, given the complications of these regulations and issues, that his company could not possibly have filed litigation against the rule within the 60-day limit. Despite that, the 60-day limit is still in the bill. So it would both restrict environmental concerns and objections raised by the public or environmental groups, and it would pretty much preclude industry concerns by any future actions. There will be two amendments at least proposed by our side of the aisle. I will offer one regarding a fair royalty fee on hard rock minerals. States throughout the West charge royalties. Tribes charge royalties, private landowners charge royalties or rents, most nations around the world charge royalties, but we, the United States of America, do not charge royalties. And then secondly, I would recommend an amendment by Mr. Lowenthal, which would tighten up the definitions in the bill to go after truly critical and strategic materials under these expedited processes instead of any and all mineral and or rock or sand extraction from federal lands. And again, I was just presented the Statement of Administrative Policy, which would, that this bill would provoke a veto because it undermines existing laws safeguarding the multiple uses of public lands by placing mining interests above all other uses. I would note that there is another bill by the subcommittee chairman, Mr. Lamborn of Colorado, H.R. 1063, which is called the National Strategic and Critical Minerals Policy Act, which did move out of the committee with Democratic support. It is bipartisan, and if we substituted that bill on the floor, we could actually move forward on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I appreciate both of you being here today. The opportunity for both of you to come representing, notwithstanding the committee, but also the interests of and needs of the United States consumers and our technology is important. Both of you have a perspective at least one of you represents a state very impacted, and I don't know about Oregon, but I do know that it's the West, and you have other thriving resources which are represented well within the committee. I would note the gentleman, Mr. DeFazio, did speak of the SAP. The President has stated, among other things, the administration strongly supports the development of rare earth elements and other critical minerals, but rejects the notion that their development is incompatible with environmental protection and public involvement in agency decision-making. This seems to be consistent with the same viewpoint that this administration has taken with not just this bill, but also with other important issues where they cannot make a decision. And indecision is costing not only this country jobs, but also indecision and lack of leadership on the part of the President, I think harms our economic future through the lack of energy exploration, in particular with the Keystone Pipeline. So not surprised that the President of the United States continues this insistence of holding hostage jobs and the American economy. I note, if I can, Mr. Amadei, in the report, page 6, by 2012, the U.S. import dependence for non-fuel mineral materials more than doubled from 30 to 61 commodities, with 17 commodities imported entirely to meet the nation's requirements, and another 24 commodities required imports of more than 50%. There was not enough information necessarily given in here to know whether we had the ability on a case-by-case basis to support these with your bill, but I would suggest that probably a good question for me would be, is this really the reason why we're doing this bill? Because we're being held hostage by our own rules and regulations of our own government, rather than us moving this country forward to meet the needs of a country that in the world of high tech needs these non-fuel mineral materials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the report didn't tell you is that these minerals, the rare earths and the others, are available and known in this country. So the next question should be, well, why are we relying for 100% of some of them on other countries? And in many instances, it's not other countries. They are our main competitors economically and national security-wise for, if you will, dominance on the world stage. So why would you rely upon your biggest competitors to provide things that are critical in the defense industry, in the health industry, in the other technology industries, those sorts of things? They exist in this country. And the answer, the direct answer to your question is, capital goes to where it has predictability and stability and knows that it can get a return in a time certain. And nowhere in NEPA, I would suggest, is there something in there that says, if you've got the facts, argue the facts. If you've got the law, argue the law. And if you haven't got either, just argue and lay administrative siege to the application. Now, those are my words, nobody else's. But the point is this. The capital industry wants as quick a return on its investment as possible worldwide. It's not the United States or anything else like that. And what we find with this administrative regimen is that those things are achievable elsewhere in the world where these minerals exist. That in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, except that when you find yourself economically and strategically hostage to those very people that you are competing with on the varsity stage, if you will, then we ought to, and I want to stress this again, not give them a nice crisp 30-month yep, but give them a nice crisp process to where you either know what the problems are and you can address them, or if you can't address them, you can move on down the road instead of, if you will, death by starvation over an interminable process where you don't know what your results are while other people are moving forward in different national venues.
Mr. Amadei, I think what you've done is carefully answer my question, first of all, and that is that the minerals that we're in reference to are obtainable in this country. but because of the bureaucracy, it has made them less economically viable. And secondly, I do know what you're talking about because I've now watched this president in his lack of leadership and ability to effectively be truthful about his leadership. I've watched the Keystone Project months after month after month go back and forth between the State Department at least twice, back to the president, and the incapacity or inability of this president to make a decision, I believe, is exactly why we are seeing this on a larger scale that is impacting not just our country and our technology, but the vulnerability of our country through the lack of jobs and being prepared for the future. So count me in as I understand why you're here today. I appreciate your ideas. Mr. DeFazio has brought up his perspective, and I appreciate him being here. I know why you're both here, and I have great respect for that, and I thank you very much. Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Amade, could I ask, just to make sure what we're talking about, could you give us a couple of examples of what kinds of strategic minerals we're talking about?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Bishop, yes, I'd be happy to. And I guess we'll start with the actual bill. Page 3, the definitions that my colleague has spoken about. There are 4 general categories there. National defense, national security requirements, energy infrastructure. You can see it bores down a little bit more. Then C, support domestic manufacturing, blah, blah. D, nation's economic security and balance of trade. Those are broad definitions on purpose because, and I haven't been here as long as anybody on this committee, but things change. And what is strategic and national, whether it's economic or tech, fabrication and construction or things like that, are things that it would be nice if we didn't have to go pass a new law in Congress every time a new one came up. I want to also point out something to the committee. If this legislation passes and passes in the Senate and you go forward, there is a process that I believe is referred to as rulemaking, so that when you talk about the definitions of these minerals and you have this statute, the Code of Federal Regulations, I assume, would require one of these land managers to make a finding that this application is for a strategic and critical mineral. So if you have applied for gravel when it is unapparent to the BLM district manager or state manager in whatever state that it is not a strategic and critical mineral, that's it. They make that finding, you can go sue them. Doesn't take 30 months to do that. But in the absence of that, and I would note that my colleague has said, gateway to many of the, if it ends in IUM, Vitrium, all the other sort of lithium in batteries for cell phones and a host of other things, then the process for that, and by the way, I guess I need to put a fine point on this. What the bill proposes is that you have 2.5 years to go through the process.
Wait, don't do that till I ask the question.
Okay. So
what's the timeline on this
the timeline on
that you're proposing for these people?
It's 30 months if the applicant requests it. 2.5 years.
So 2.5 years to make a decision.
Yep.
Does your bill destroy NEPA?
Nope.
Does it say anything about NEPA being avoided?
There's nothing in these 11 pages that says NEPA is repealed.
So it's the assumption then that NEPA can be established within 2.5 years. Although there are some examples we have awaiting 7 to 10 years for decisions.
Yep.
What is dragging those decisions out generally?
Well, in the ones I'm familiar with, Mr. Bishop, it is the fact that there is no timeline. There is no deadline from which to act.
Is litigation a problem with these timelines as well?
If you favor access to justice in the courts, then in order to do that in this area, you have to have a final decision at the federal administrative or permitting level. So if you don't have that decision, then you never have the ability to go to court. And so there is my reference earlier in my testimony to laying administrative siege to the process.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're simply saying you expect the federal government to do something. And in 2.5 years, you assume that is an adequate time for them to actually do something. And that if somebody wants to sue on that, let them do it in an adequate period of time and not just allow the system to drag on and on. Can I ask you a simple question about the royalties issue again right now?
Yep.
Is there a reason that industry is willing to pay royalties to a state and not necessarily that happy about paying it to a federal government?
Not that I'm aware of, except with all due respect to Chairman Hastings, who's not here. I believe tax issues are within the jurisdiction of your colleagues on Ways and Means, and not the Natural Resources Committee.
If there was an additional federal royalty attached on top, would that be replacing a state royalty, or would it be an additional cost to the business to be developed? If you add a federal royalty onto this, is that in addition to what is already being paid, or would that replace something that's going to the state and federal, local governments right now?
Well, depending upon what form it took, I can tell you that there would generally be a write-off under general tax law, federal tax law. There would generally be a write-off against the state taxes if they're based on either gross or net proceeds. So what you would be doing is inviting the states to relook at their regimes of taxation, which would result in, I would assume, an increase in taxes for these folks. And I want to also, when you talk about the timeline, put a highlight on this, which is no applicant seeks a permit in the hope that they can get a no in 30 months. Otherwise, why would they apply? So if there is more time required to do a NEPA study or something else like that, this has the mechanism to allow that. As you'll see, agreed to by both parties, like, listen, if you need 42 months, if you need 36 months, and we need to do this, then, I mean, getting a no so you can go to court does not make anybody in the minerals business any money. What they want is a permit. So therefore, when we say 30 months and it's like, well, you got to do it in 30 months, it's like, well, you can have no in 30 months if the record's incomplete, but at least it gives the applicant an oar in the water, if you will, to say, okay, how long is it going to take us to do the extra study? And agree on a time frame and get it done so that they have, and I'll end where we started, that predictability and stability into not getting the answer they want, but knowing when they're going to get an answer.
I think you answered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized.
Thank you very much. This is all very interesting, but it seems familiar. Did we consider a similar bill or identical bill last year?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. McGovern, yes, sir.
And did the Senate take it up?
No, they did not, but that's the Senate. As my colleague mentioned, they're not on a big work schedule.
Right. Well, no, but they seem to be more productive than we are, unfortunately, this time around. Look, what I'm going to ask is unanimous consent that my comments a year ago in opposition to this bill be Xeroxed and put in the record to save people time. And I want to...
Without objection, as the gentleman chooses to do.
And I just want to point out to my... We could do that for future bills, too, especially the repeat ones. I mean, there's, but I just want to point out to my colleagues that as we are gathered here today, because of inaction on sequestration, we have National Guardsmen and women that are being furloughed. We have Head Start programs that are being shut down. We have over 700 NIH funded research programs to try to find cures to diseases and find better ways to treat people who get ill. Those are all put on hold. And, I'm just stunned by the lack of urgency to deal with that issue. Student loan issue is another one. And we're doing this. I respect the gentleman and his viewpoints, but I just, in the scheme of what is urgent, this doesn't, to me, rise to the top of the list. And I would urge the chairman of the Rules Committee to please communicate to his leadership that we need to do something about sequestration because it is doing great damage to this country. at every level. And, you know, and when I was home, I had members of the National Guard come to me and talk to me about being furloughed. I mean, we got to figure out a way to do this. You may have one way of dealing with it. We may have another way, but we ought to bring our opposing views to the floor and have it out and try to get this thing fixed, because people are being negatively impacted and our economy is being negatively impacted. So I would hope that maybe we can soon convene on an alternative to sequestration and finding a way to fix the student loan interest rate bill. I think those are of urgent importance, and I would hope that somehow the gentleman can communicate to his leadership that we ought to be considering those bills. I thank the gentleman.
I appreciate the feedback from the gentleman, and in fact, I'm pleased to report that at almost every single leadership meeting, there is a discussion, a serious discussion about wanting the Senate to please take up a student loan bill, that we recognize that the bill that previously we were working under caused rates to double, that was passed by the Democrat leadership and signed by the President. We also recognize that the sequestration bill that we're under was signed by the President of the United States and is the law of the land, and we just don't have the ability.
The gentleman would yield just for
I will in just a second. That we just don't have the desire to tell the President, why don't you just follow part of the law as you see fit, like you've done or started doing health care. We believe the entire law needs to be understood and followed to the extent of the law, and not just take those exceptions as you choose. I would engage the gentleman.
I just want the record to be clear that in order for there to be a law, the United States House of Representatives had to pass a bill, and the Republican majority led the effort to pass the bill with sequestration, and we're in this mess right now. And I would just, all we're asking for the leadership of this House to do is get out of the way and let us bring some alternatives to the floor and fix some of these problems that, quite frankly, are negatively impacting all of our constituents. And I venture to guess that all of us, when we've been home over the 4th of July recess, have been approached by people in our districts who have been adversely impacted by these cuts, these across-the-board indiscriminate cuts, and including members of our National Guard. And I think at this point we ought to do something about it. And I'm just urging the gentleman to let his leadership know that some of us here are anxious to get something done to reverse it. I thank the gentleman.
I appreciate the gentleman. Several months ago, we'd understood the President had indicated he would not engage the House of Representatives nor the Speaker of the United States Congress on that issue. And as long as you've got a President of the United States who is insistent of not negotiating with the House of Representatives, it seems like to me that that is not revisionist history, that's reality. And the revisionist history that could be told would be that this was our idea. In fact, as you know, the gentleman who sits as Secretary of Treasury floated this idea, and the President made sure it became part of the dialogue during the super committee discussion. One of our colleagues, the gentleman from the 5th District of Texas, the young chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, now Jeb Hensarling, led at that time the super committee, which was with great anticipation and an opportunity to see if non-leadership people in the House of Representatives and the Senate could lead us to a perspective that would allow our country to avoid the circumstances with a debt limit increase. And as I would recall, the facts of the case are the Democrats on the committee failed to bring one idea to a vote. Republicans had an idea that did not pass because it was on a party line vote, and the agreement was by the President of the United States, if neither party could come to a conclusion, he would stick us with sequestration. That was the agreement, so that was the law. And I don't think that the facts of the case are any different than what I stated, so here we go. I thank the gentleman very much for his constant and regular interaction with me, because we do need to continue struggling together, and it means that we listen to each other and that we keep our messaging alive, and that is I will continue to do that within Republican leadership. The Speaker of the House, the gentleman, Mr. Boehner, is very concerned about it. The Majority Leader, Mr. Cantor, has engaged in numerous discussions within the items that have been placed before this House to discuss these and many other issues, and Republican ideas are waiting to be answered by the Senate, and I appreciate it very much. Gentlemen, Mr. Cole, the chairman from Oklahoma, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank both you gentlemen for being here, and I particularly want to thank the gentleman from Nevada for this bill. A number of years ago, I sat on the Natural Resources Committee, and one of my great frustrations was exactly what you're trying to get at in this legislation. That is the fact that we had abundant mineral resources, had the ability to mine them, probably do it more safely than anybody else in the world, better regulatory environment. I remember asking some of the producers that were doing extensive work overseas that came to testify, well, you know, is it a labor issue? And they said, no, with mechanization and with the superior infrastructure in this country, this ought to all be done here. But the regulatory framework that they're operating under is extraordinarily difficult, and so we're just driving our own producers offshore, and as you suggest, putting ourselves at a tremendous disadvantage vis-a-vis our competitors. So I appreciate very much what you're trying to do here, and look forward to having the opportunity to vote on it. I can't, so I don't have a lot of questions. You explained them pretty well at Mr. Reed's expense at a WHIP meeting yesterday, so not much need to go into that. But I do want to associate myself with my friend, the chairman's remarks on sequestration. It is an issue, and I agree with my friend from Massachusetts. It's a serious issue. And I see it. It impacts my district tremendously. I have over 20,000 civilian defense workers that are being furloughed, a lot of institutions that are being affected, everything from Indian hospitals to the National Weather Center to, I can tick them off. Believe me, I probably have more than most people. And I'm proud that the House did act twice legislatively to try and deal with this. There didn't seem to be much interest on the part of the administration or the United States Senate. When we got into this year, rather than sit down with the Speaker, the President conducted essentially a 6-week political campaign and then invited the Speaker on the very last day to come to the White House for what was obviously a set-up photo opportunity. So this is originally the President's idea. I think Mr. Woodward established that pretty clearly. And he advocated for it. He signed it into law. He's never put out a specific legislative proposal that's a serious solution. I think we've offered multiple times to sit down and renegotiate where the cuts come from. We all know we're taking too much out of discretionary spending and leaving largely untouched the entitlement side of the ledger. That was an issue that we discussed here in this committee recently, and it's creating tremendous problems in the appropriation process. But until the President's willing to sit down and deal with entitlements seriously, I think these things are going to continue. And look, I've worked with my friends on everything from fiscal cliff to Sandy to violence against women. I know when somebody's working with me in good faith and when they're not. And I don't think the administration has worked with us in good faith. I think they simply thought we would get to the end of the day and collapse. And that wasn't ever going to happen. It's just a misunderstanding. And perhaps the two sides misunderstood one another here. But once those cuts were written into law, they were going to occur. Now, where they were going to occur, I think, was always negotiable. But that they were going to occur was not. And in the same way, by the way, I've always said that about the fiscal cliff. Once those tax increases were timed to run out, the President won re-election, some of them were going to end. They're just going to do it. Now, negotiate which ones, talk about what, but the idea that you could just dig in and the other side would, when it had something it wanted to achieve in law, guaranteed, they're not going to just simply, wave a white flag on that. But I applaud your efforts because I know they're sincere. I'd like to sit down and deal with this as well, but I'd like to deal with it by continuing to do what the administration, by the way, is very proud of. They sent a release out yesterday touting their achievements and lowering the deficit and how much better off it was. My goodness, it's already $200 billion better off than we thought it was 3 months ago. So you can't claim credit and cast stones at the same time. I don't think they, if a lower budget deficit's good, then gosh, how come that was a good thing today, but it's a bad thing tomorrow, and it'll be a good thing again the day after? So again, I'd like to, I think the chair, I shouldn't have gone on as long as I did. I associate myself with the chairman's remarks. I look forward to working with my friends on.
Gentleman, yield for a
I
second.
certainly yield to my friend from Utah.
My goal here is to obviously prolong this meeting as long as possible. Because, you know, it's a resource bill. I'll talk about resource a long time. But since the gentleman from Massachusetts brought up sequestration and the gentleman from Oklahoma mentioned it, I am compelled to say something very quickly, since I am in the same situation as Mr. Cole, having a huge portion of civilian defense workforce in my district. So we're going to have another 11 to 15,000 people who will start their furlough systems on Friday. None of them are happening before Friday. But I want to, once again, for the record, make it clear that when sequestration passed, it was a bipartisan bill. I am happy to say that I was one of the Republicans who voted against it because I thought it was too dangerous to play that game with our military. Don't take any great pride in that because the problem still exists. But as Mr. Cole was very clear to say, I did vote since that time twice to solve this problem, which the House did vote, once again, on good bipartisan votes, and were not taken up by the Senate. I want to put one other element to it on this issue of sequestration, especially as it deals with our military. If you're playing a baseball game and you're behind 3-2 in the 8th inning, are you behind because the opposition scored their third run or because they scored the first 2 runs? What is different for the military is sequestration has hit them with the assistance of furloughs only because there were 2 cuts to the military budget before sequestration hit. Had those 2 first cuts not been infected, there would have been no furloughs right now. With sequestration, they could have handled it. It is sequestration that basically put it over the top because of the prior 2 cuts. And the military of this country is in a unique situation vis-a-vis the rest of government agencies because they did not have those first 2 cuts that hit before sequestration came. So I'm as frustrated as everyone else, especially when we have a revolving working fund, which is not in arrears, which means our depot workers probably, the money is still there if it had been decided that not everyone has to feel the same kind of pain. That's a frustration to me as well. But I did have to mention, because this issue was brought up and it becomes so critical to my constituents. Now, having said that, this is still a darn good bill, and to those people who are involved in the critical mining industries, this is a critical issue to them as well, and I appreciate you for bringing it back, and I'll yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman for yielding. I'm very pleased to have joined him in signing a letter on that working capital fund. We both have workers that were affected. There's layoffs that didn't have to occur. The administration made the decision that it wanted to receive some sort of uniform. It doesn't affect appropriations, doesn't do anything. We had the money to keep those people at work, and the administration consciously chose not to do it. It's hard to believe that there wasn't a political element or calculation in that. With that, I yield back, but I do thank the gentleman for his bid.
I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma. The gentleman from Florida, Judge Hastings, recognized.
Thank you very much,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to yield to Mr. McGovern such time as he may consume.
I won't take very much time. I just wanted to disassociate myself with the remarks of my colleagues, although I want to applaud Mr. Bishop for voting no on sequestration. I voted no as well. I wish a majority of members on your side of the aisle had voted no. We wouldn't be in this mess. But I want to make it clear that under this Republican House, sequestration was passed. I just also want to make one other point, and that is that, while we sit around here and make excuses and, and on and on and on and on, I mean, we're not doing anything to solve the problem. We haven't done anything this year to solve the problem. There's been, and there are lots of ideas out there. And I will tell you that I feel the urgency when I go home based on the pain that's being inflicted on a lot of my constituents. I just wish there was more urgency here. I mean, with all due respect to what we're talking about here today, this is a bill that we know is going nowhere. I would much prefer us to be taking our time here trying to figure out, maybe between Democrats and Republicans in the House, or maybe between the House and the Senate to come up with some alternative to sequestration. So that more of our National Guards, men and women, are not furloughed, so that more defense workers are not furloughed, so that more Head Start centers are not shut down. I mean, this is an abomination. It's a failure. And we're all sitting around up here and, saying all the obligatory things about how terrible it is, but we're not doing anything about it. And that's where my frustration is, and I appreciate the time. I yield back to the gentleman.
Mr. Chairman, I thank Mr. Amadei and Mr. DeFazio for being here. I have no questions.
Thank you very much. The gentleman, Mr. Nugent's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Mr. Amadei for bringing this legislation forward. If you could just clarify, the rare earth minerals currently that we don't produce, that we do have in the ground, where are they coming from now?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Nugent, the majority of them are coming from China. The vast majority that we're using and are 100% dependent upon are coming from China.
And what type of products would they produce?
Well, there's some examples. Over 66 individual minerals are used to make the typical computer. Now you say, well, what are those rare earths? Well, some of those 66 in the typical computer are silver, aluminum, copper, and gold. Those aren't what many people would consider rare earths. But then if we go down to, let's say, iPods, for instance, they require rare earth minerals. Stick with me on this. This is harder to pronounce than my last name. Dysprosium, anyhow, the last letters are IUM. Phrasodymin, thank you for this question. I really appreciate that.
Well, it's something to do with is there something to do with lipstick in there too? But
yeah, there's lipstick, but I thought I'd leave that out after the way that went the other day. But anyhow, those are a couple examples on either end of the spectrum. Suffice it to say that when the claim is made, and Mr. DeFazio has talked about something limiting it to things that I assume end with IUM, but we have a tough time pronouncing the first part of it. Those are the traditional ones. But then when you go beyond that and look at how we compete on the economic stage internationally and globally, and also how things changed just in the last 20 years. Who would have thought anybody would have cared about something like lithium 20 years ago? Key component in rechargeable batteries and almost everything we use now, whether it's hybrid vehicles, and there's another, I've got 4 more things that I'd be happy to leave with the committee. I can assure you all 3 of them end in IUM. But regardless of what your politics are, there's something in that for everyone. And if I could just real briefly, with no disrespect, but in my state, 86% of the ground in the state is owned by the federal government. Now, I'm not saying that as a preface to an editorial. I'm saying that is a simple, stark fact. So with all due respect to my colleague in the Bay State, and I know it's not as important as sequestration, if you live in a western state, the chances are 40% or more of your surface area is owned by the federal government. So when you talk about economic development and jobs and national security and how we own many of these resources as the federal government, in terms of helping ourselves, you know, the Bay State's less than 100% federally owned. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but it's a big, big deal out west, and especially when 86% of your state is owned by the federal government, and you say, we can't tell you whether or not you can make any use of that in a time frame certain. And I guess at its core, this is about telling people whether they can get a permit, a federal permit, in a time frame certain, not what the result will be. And with all due respect, you know, this is a bill that's going nowhere. I'd sure like to know who holds the keys to defining one that's going somewhere right now, because in the 22 months I've been here, it's a little tough to figure out what's going somewhere versus nowhere. So with that,
well, I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you, we hear that all the time, is why would we bring up a bill that's not going to go anywhere? Just to go back to the last Congress, where we did bring up 2 bills to address sequestration. So this time we haven't brought anything up because I guess we listened to you, because you say it's not going to go anywhere. When the Senate has the opportunity, and they had the opportunity to bring up either one of those bills or something similar to it and send it to conference. They had the ability to do it. The President could have used the bully pulpit to, if he's truly concerned about sequestration, to push that, to start a dialogue in regards to those pieces of legislation that were passed out of this House that took the initiative, but he decided to sit on his hands instead, along with the Senate. So I get tired of hearing the same thing about, hey, listen, we haven't done anything. That's just not true. It's not accurate. It's not correct. Now, you may not like what we passed, and the Senate has every opportunity to change it in the Senate back or through conference. But they decide to do absolutely nothing. And that's not our fault. So I want to thank you once again for bringing this piece of legislation forward, because I do believe it would be nice not to be facing a monopoly called China in regards to items that we need to produce goods in this country, and particularly goods that could be classified as something that could affect our national defense. So
Will the gentleman yield to me?
I'd be glad to.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, how the Senate is such a big problem when on the budget, for example, Senate passed a budget, we passed a budget, but we're the ones who are refusing to go to conference. So I'm trying to understand
Well,
where the...
let's go back to 2 years ago with, piece of legislation. They easily could have done it. It's sequestration, and I agree with you, it affects everybody. If sequestration was such a bad thing at the time, reclaiming my time, why would they not at least bring it up? Why would they not at least bring it up? And why would the president sit there on his thumbs?
The reason why I say the gentleman is you need 60 votes, unfortunately, because the Republicans are insisting on 60 votes to do anything, and they don't want it.
Well,
Republicans don't want a balanced package.
I'm sure that
and so we're in
Mr.
this,
Reed, reclaiming my time, I'm sure Mr. Reed will probably come up with a nuclear.
No, I mean, why can't we get an immigration bill? Why can't we get...
So I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Appreciate the gentleman's comments, and Mr. Amadei provides a bit of theater here today. So, Mr. Amadei, we're delighted that you practiced before you got here. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. My main concern I want to ask Mr. Amadei about, and it's reflected in amendment I offered, number 53, is my district is one of the main economic drivers in Eagle and Summit County, Grand County's tourism. Relating to recreation, fishing, skiing, hunting. These are huge economic drivers of jobs, and I have no idea what minerals may or may not be there, and people go gold panning. There's a history, of course, of gold and silver mining. But the question is, many of these activities have an impact on jobs that we have in the recreation industry. So what the amendment that I propose is that the lead agency granting the mineral exploration or mine permits would look at the other public land uses, including hunting, fishing, recreation, tourism, that are a factor in granting the permits. I worry that without that, for a district like mine, this could be sort of penny wise, pound foolish. I mean, obviously we have minerals in the ground, but let's say that extracting $50 million in minerals costs us $100 million in tourism and recreation business. Shouldn't we look at all of the economic utilization of the federal land, and these counties are, of course, like your state, a majority owned by the federal government. I don't have the exact percentage of those counties, but Eagle, Summit, Grand County specifically, the federal government is the largest landholder. But we in our communities thrive on tourism and recreation industry. Which is, I'm not arguing, of course, is fully incompatible with extraction, but its impact on extraction, where you do it, how you do it, the use of federal land. So where we have a higher and better economic use of land, and again, shouldn't we be looking at that for the lead agency as well?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Paulus, I don't disagree with you. I would refer you to page 5 of the bill that talks about that federal land manager under subsection B on line 4 starts there. I'm looking specifically at line 12, says, if procedural and substantive safeguards of the permitting process alone, federally, that's NEPA, any applicable state permitting process alone, that's all your state processes, or a combination of the two, you can put them together to look at things that you have just described. So my response would be that this does not take precedence over those. We would expect that process to continue to go under the existing NEPA and state licensing requirements. The federal land manager permit processor, I would expect, would under those state and federal guidelines continue to do that. I might also mention,
Just to clarify that, I think the section you're referring to refers to environmental factors, but I don't see where it necessarily includes recreation and tourism and other economic factors like that, which may overlap with environmental factors but are different.
well, I don't see anything that prohibits those either, with all due respect. And like I said about some of the earlier stuff, when you do the Code of Federal Regulations, there's nothing to limit that. But I might also point out that some of the procedures that are taken into account right now under the federal process, I'm going to go through the list real quick, but be happy to leave a copy with the committee for members. Here are things that still must be considered. Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, Endangered Species, Federal Land Policy Management Act, National Environmental Policy Acts, National Historic Preservation Act. This is federally, not state. State Drinking Water Act, Surface Mining Control Act, Toxic Substances, Wilderness, BLM.
Reclaiming my time, I mean, while some of those are very nice things, and I'm sure we all have ways that we, specific objections to others, none of those particularly relate to the impact that extraction can have on tourism and recreation, which is an economic driver, certainly, of my district. I want to see if Mr. DeFazio wants to address that as well. I'm certainly aware of all of those other provisions. The bill, as you mentioned, includes the provision you noted. But in terms of the jobs in my district, this can be a job-destroying bill, and that ought to be a factor in the lead agency's consideration. I'll go to Mr. DeFazio.
The gentleman makes an excellent point. In fact, the lead agency might not have within its purview any of the alternate uses that the gentleman is referring to, particularly if we're talking about the Minerals Management Agency. They do not have an obligation to consider hunting, fishing, recreation, tourism, and other beneficial uses of the public lands, which may have indeed a higher value than a low-value extraction of, like, say, maybe it's really handy to go and get, just because there's a lot of activity in the area and you got a shortage of gravel. Well, we're going to do a gravel extraction. It just happens to fall into the middle of a prime area for one of those other activities. That would be given precedence. And what it does say in the bill is that, procedural substantive safeguards of the lead agency's permitting process, again, they may have nothing within that to safeguard those other uses, or any applicable state permitting process alone, or a combination of two processes together provide an adequate mechanism to ensure that environmental factors are taken into account. Adequate mechanism. That is not and does not elevate any other uses except extraction to the level where it would get a full NEPA process.
Yeah, and the point being as well that when we're talking about environmental issues, that's not just the feel-good aspect of it. We're in the case of Summit and Eagle County, we're talking about our economic drivers of recreation. The actual economic value of clean mountain water, the economic value of beautiful vistas, the economic value of skiing, of hiking, of biking, of hunting, and our entire economy, a large part of it revolves around that value, which we don't want to sacrifice for something that represents a small fraction of that. You could see a scenario where there's a couple hundred mining jobs and it costs several thousand tourism-related jobs. So, again, my amendment doesn't ban, require anything. It simply says the lead agency ought to look at those other uses. For a district like mine, that's absolutely critical, and I think consistent with, hopefully, the goal of the bill to help use our federal land for the highest and best economic use, some of which in my district, again, is related to recreation and tourism. So I certainly hope that our committee will allow this amendment to be discussed on the floor, and particularly for those of us like yourself, like Mr. Bishop, for whom the federal government is the major landholder, as it is in several of my counties. This is very important to us. This is very important to us for jobs, for our districts. We have to come to Washington for these sorts of things. Sometimes we wish we didn't. But in this case, preserving and growing our economy, our recreation and construction-oriented economy, the construction piece feeding off of the recreation piece. Those are the two main drivers in our famous resorts like Vail and Beaver Creek and Winter Park and Breckenridge, which we encourage you all to visit. in summer or winter. But for us to be able to continue to grow our economies in those districts, it's absolutely critical the lead agency at least look at the impact of mineral exploration on recreation and tourism in districts such as mine, but many, many other districts across the country where those have considerable economic value. And I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. By the way, this committee has handled for a long time those types of issues, as we recall years ago, with issues of the timber industry in Oregon, where the Obama administration and their rules and regulations devastated small businesses and family-owned businesses, that devastated the tax base of cities and counties to where they were not even able to operate their schools because the industry went away. Then there were people stranded on mountains where volunteers were not able to effectively be paid for by resources of local people, and it is a big issue. I have great concern for what the gentleman is speaking of, and admiration not only with an understanding, but admire his strong words of an understanding of things that happen to communities like this. And I thank the gentleman for his comments.
Would the gentleman yield further? Oh, did you yield back to the chairman?
I do have the time, but I would yield to the gentleman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you referenced Oregon,
the gentleman is recognized.
Actually, the current state of affairs of the timber industry was involved a number of administrations, and actually the harvest levels have not diminished from the levels of the Bush years under the Obama administration. It actually predates both those. It was a result of actions taken by the first Bush administration and the Clinton administration in their so-called Northwest Forest Plan, which led to this state of affairs, and I did oppose at that time the President Clinton's Northwest Forest Plan. Predicted it would not resolve our timber issues in terms of protection of critical areas and the use of resources in non-critical areas. It hasn't, and it's a continuing struggle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate the gentleman not only from his expertise, but also his knowledge of this important issue from a perspective of living in Oregon, and will recall quite well the big debate that engaged in the Rules Committee on that issue. Does the gentleman, Mr. Amadei, seek to be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just briefly, if I may.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to remind the committee that there is nothing in this 11-page bill which in any way, shape, or form repeals state and local zoning laws. And while you may need a federal permit to mine or harvest timber or whatever, it is still the counties and the cities that have exclusive zoning control over the area within their borders. So when you talk about mixing tourist commercial or recreational with an extraction process, I would find it interesting to believe that a county commission in Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, or wherever would approve an extraction operation in the middle of a ski resort or something else. So while I know this is Congress in Washington, D.C., the last time I checked, local planning and zoning takes precedence over land uses in terms of trying to mix extraction operations with tourist commercial, and I dare say I think they do a pretty good job of avoiding those conflicts. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments from the gentleman. The gentleman from Florida, the gentleman, Mr. Webster, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion on this bill. I think it's an important bill. And just to clarify, maybe even a further step, the sponsor, this bill in no way guarantees anyone a permit. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So all of these proposed catastrophic events that potentially could happen can be stopped by just no. Is that correct?
That is correct. This bill seeks to give you a time frame that you can count on as an applicant to get either an affirmative decision, a negative decision, or agree to extend the process further for studies.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, too, you brought up something I thought was important, and that is the fact that, and this would at least say to those that believe that this is not an important piece of legislation, it did garner the ear, as many other pieces of legislation that come to this committee does, to the administration.
and they sent out a statement that was a negative statement about the bill, which I think is interesting, given what the chairman said just earlier. Why would you spend the time to send out something that says possibility of recommendation of a veto? Why would you even veto a bill? If you're not, if you can select which bills you enforce or don't enforce, including your own, why do you even need to talk about a veto? I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentlewoman, the chairwoman, is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I wanted to repeat in another way what Mr. Nugent, my Florida colleague, had pointed out, that we and most of the countries are almost 100% dependent on China for these rare earth elements and metals, and our dependence on China for these critical raw materials is an unnecessary risk to our national security, a threat to our economic competitiveness. So I thank my colleagues for bringing this bill once again to our attention, because rare earth minerals are essential to American military weapon systems, including precision-guided missiles, smart bombs, advanced aircraft systems, satellites, night vision equipment. And in addition to defense equipment, they're crucial to the production of advanced electronics, and as we discussed, computing systems, telecommunications equipment, renewable energy technologies, catalytic converters, and are used in everyday appliances like Blackberries and iPhones. So I think this bill is a valuable bill. It will contribute to our local economies, create jobs. It benefits our nation's overall national security and get us less dependent on China for these elements. So I thank the gentleman for their work, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Does the gentlewoman, Mrs. Slaughter, wish to be recognized? Thank you very much. The gentleman, Dr. Burgess.
Mr. Chairman, I do feel obligated to point out, while the statement of administration policy is extremely negative toward the bill, they actually don't threaten a veto. And Mr. Hamadeh, that leads me to ask, what is wrong with your legislation? Because everything else we've considered up here has at least drawn a veto threat. So there clearly is something flawed in the legislation that you've drafted.
I appreciate that perspective. I hadn't thought about it, but you might be onto something there.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank both gentlemen for being here and spending so much time with us today. It is an important topic, and look forward to having a vote on the floor on this, and I'll yield back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Burgess. Does the gentleman from Georgia wish to be recognized? The gentleman does not wish at this time. I want to thank both of you for taking time. The gentleman, Mr. DeFazio, congratulations on the new assignment, I assume, which will be made in order. No, you're not. I will leave that point alone then. I did not know what the determination of the caucus was. Despite that, it's my hope that you had so much fun that you can't wait to get back to the Rules Committee at your earliest convenience, and we would welcome that. Mr. Hamadeh, thank you for your time, for your professional conduct, and for you bringing this bill forward today. I want to thank both of you very much. You're both excused. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I ask unanimous consent that the statement of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee in support of her amendment be accepted into the record.
Without objection, we will accept the gentlewoman's request for that to be entered into the record. And I want to thank you for accepting that on behalf of my fellow Texas colleague also. We now are not seeing any member that wishes to be recognized to speak on the bill. We'll now close the hearing on H.R. 761. Chair will be in receipt of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 761, the National Strategic and Critical Mineral Reduction Act of 2013, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against the consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute, consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 113-17, and provides that it should be considered as read. The rule waives all points of orders against the amendment Nature of substitute, the rule makes in order only those further amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, and shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment printed in the bill. Do you want to read the final sentence? No, sir. All right. And finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've now heard the motion from the gentleman from Utah. The gentleman would now be recognized to further explain the rule.
So it's a structured rule. It provides 1 hour of general debate that's controlled by the committee. This rule makes in order half of the amendments that have been submitted and all from Democrat sponsors. So it seems like it's a fairly decent rule that will allow a vigorous debate on the House floor.
I appreciate the gentleman. You've now heard the motion from the gentleman from Utah. Is there debate or an amendment to be offered?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you. I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make in order and give the necessary waivers for amendment number 9 by Representative DeFazio, which assess a royalty fee of 8% for new hard rock mining operations and 4% for existing hard rock mining operations. The revenues would then be used to reclaim abandoned hard rock mines, which I think is very practical.
You've now heard the amendment by the gentlewoman from New York in defense of the gentleman from Oregon, which is a huge increase in cost. And so I would oppose that. Further discussion. Hearing a royalty fee, a further fee on the cost of production. And I do appreciate the gentlewoman's designation of royalty fee. Further discussion? Those in favor of the slaughter amendment, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. No. Roll call. No, the noes have it. Roll call.
Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox? No. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop? No. Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole? No. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent? No. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Ross-Leitman? No. Ms. Ross-Leitman? No. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess? No. Ms. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to. If further amendment or discussion, gentleman from Massachusetts recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move that committee grant H.R. 761 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bill on the floor. And I would just say that despite the title, this legislation has absolutely nothing to do with the development of rare earth and other strategic minerals. It's just another Republican giveaway to the mining industry that will actually hurt the environment, public lands, not to mention local communities if this were ever to see the light of day. So I think that it would be only appropriate that we should grant this bill an open rule so that amendments, any vital protections can be debated on the House floor, and urge my colleagues to vote aye.
You've now heard the amendment by the gentleman from Massachusetts. Those are further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox? Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Ross-Leitman?
No.
Ms. Ross-Leitman, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Ms. Slaughter?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Clerk is not agree. The amendment's not agreed to. Not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Florida,
Chairman,
Judge
I have an
Hastings
amendment to the
recognized.
rule. I move the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for amendment number 4 by Representative Shea Porter, which requires any person or corporation that is applying for a permit under H.R. 761 to disclose all electioneering expenditures made by them in the last 5 years.
You have now heard the amendment from the gentleman that is directly related to electioneering and political activity. I oppose that. And further discussion. Those in favor of the Hastings amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Noes have it.
You want
Noes
a roll
have it.
call?
Gentleman asks for a roll call.
Ms. Fox?
No.
Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, no. Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, no. Ms. Ross-Leitonen?
No.
Ms. Ross-Leitonen, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Ms. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern? Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Amendments not agreed to, not agreed to. Further discussion on amendment. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for my amendment, number 12, which provides that the lead agency granting mineral exploration or mine permits ensures that other public land uses, including hunting, fishing, recreation, and tourism, are considered as a factor whether to grant such permits. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I discussed this with our witnesses for many of our districts that have major jobs and economic interests in tourism and recreation. I think it's important that that be considered at all levels, and that doesn't mean always favorably considered. Maybe there's more jobs in mining in some cases. Maybe there's more jobs in recreation. But in a district like mine, we don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face here. And my amendment will help ensure that this is not a job-destroying bill. And I hope that we can discuss it on the floor.
You've now heard the discussion from the gentleman from Colorado, and I have great empathy not only for the substance behind what the gentleman speaks of, but also the spirit behind that. I do recognize and believe very much that local communities and extraneous issues necessarily to mining or other issues need to be taken into place. This bill did not, in my opinion, offer that a broad enough explanation. I believe it should be a systematic thing. I would encourage the gentleman. I will help him to approach the gentleman, the chairman of the committee, former member of this committee, Doc Hastings, who I think would be receptive to our ideas. However, on this amendment, I would offer a no vote. Further discussion.
I'll withdraw the amendment.
I'm sorry?
Withdraw my amendment.
That's very gracious of the gentleman. I will agree that I'm available as of about 15 minutes from now to discuss that with you and approach the gentleman from here forward, because I deeply believe that what you've talked about should be a part of the policy of this country that provides local people an avenue to participate with those activities that will take place in their community. So I thank the gentleman. That amendment has been withdrawn. Is there further amendment or discussion? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the motion from the gentleman from Utah. Those in favor of the gentleman's motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No. Roll call, please.
The ayes have it. Roll call is requested.
Ms. Fox? Aye. Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop, aye. Mr. Cole? Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall? Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent, aye. Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster, aye. Ms. Ross-Leitonen?
Aye.
Ms. Ross-Leitonen, aye. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, aye. Ms. Slaughter?
No.
Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern? Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report.
9 yeas, 4 nays.
The motion is agreed to. The motion is agreed to. And the gentleman, Mr. Bishop, will be the manager for Republicans.
Oh, Mr. Hastings, thank you.
And Judge Hastings will be representing the Democrats on the floor. I would like to advise all members that what I'm getting ready to say is not for sure. However, we've all heard discussions of a possible further action on the farm bill that could possibly take place this week. And while I do not have any meeting that is scheduled at this point, nor has public notice been given, I would like to give members as much notice as possible that it could be that we will be notifying you about action that may be taking place in this committee on that bill. I want to thank each and every one of you, not only for the substance that you have offered us today, but also the engagement, as we deeply believe in this committee receiving our colleagues. I would yield to the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to recognize two people who are with me today. Jack Villar is in the back over there. Jack is a very good friend of our former colleague Nan Hayworth and is doing an internship in our office for part of the summer. And I'm glad this is the first opportunity he's had to come to a Rules Committee meeting. And then my friend Jean Barrow, who's from Greensboro, from Howard Coble's district, but is visiting for a couple of days. And I want to thank them for being here today.
Thank you very much, Jack and Jean. Welcome. I also have two young women, one from New York, who is, she is the, now, just so I can properly explain this, I may be her favorite congressman, but she described herself when she asked for the job as being from Northeast Texas. And so we failed to clarify, but I'm delighted that it's pretty Northeast Texas, but Louise, so Kentucky extends that way too, as you have claimed your roots. So we're waiting for that and would very much enjoy it. With great admiration, we thank all four of you for not only joining us today, but for the activity of our colleagues. I want to thank each of you for being here today and for what lies ahead. We're now finished with work for the day, and we're done.